أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Sincerity. Sincerity is a purifying intentions from disingenuous acts. God Almighty said in the Holy Quran, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. And they were not commanded except to worship Allah being sincere to Him in religion. Surah Al-Bayyinah, verse number 5. Ala lillahi dinul khalis. Surely sincere obedience is due to Allah alone. Surah Az-Zumar, verse number 3. So Allah will not accept any deed unless it is done purely and sincerely for Himself alone. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ تَابُوا وَأَصْلَحُوا وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِاللَّهِ وَأَخْلَصُوا دِينَهُمْ لِلَّهِ. Save those who repent and amend and hold fast to Allah and make their religion pure for Allah only. In the book of Al-Kafi, it is narrated from Imam Ali bin Musa al-Ridha alayhi salam that the commander of the faithful said, Quba liman akhlasa lillahi ibadata wa du'a. Blessed be thus sincerely devotes worship and supplication to God. Walam yashghil qalbuhu bima tara aynah. And his heart was not preoccupied with what his eyes could see. Sayyid Abdullah Shabbar wrote in his book that sincerity has different ranks. First rank is Martabatus Shakirin, the grateful ones. They are the ones who worship God Almighty. They thank God for His infinite blessings. As God Almighty said, وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. And if you would count Allah's favors, you will not be able to number them. Surah An-Nahl, verse number 18. Sayyidina wa Maulana Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam said, Inna qawman abadullaha raqbatan fatilka ibadatu tujjar. Some people worship God willingly, so it is the worship of the merchants. Wa inna qawman abadullaha rahbatan. Some people worship God with feeling of respect combined with fear. Fatilka ibadatul abid. That the worship of slaves. Wa inna qawman abadullaha shukran. And some people have worshipped God with gratitude. Fatilka ibadatul ahrar. So that worship of independent people. Second, ibadatul muqarrabin. Worship of nearer. They are those who worship God as closeness to Him. Near either according to status, rank and perfection. As the wajibul wujud, necessary assistant, is complete from all sides, and the mumkinul wujud, or we can call possible assistant, is deficient in all sides. If the slave seeks to remove his deficiencies and despicable, he will be close to God spiritually. As is stated in the hadith, تَخَلَّقُوا بِأَخْلَاقِ اللَّهِ. Obtain the morals of God. As for proximity in terms of love and companionship, as such, if a person in the east and another in the west, and between them is the perfection of love and bonding, and one of them does not neglect to mention its beloved and utter his praises and perfection, then it is said, between them is the perfection of closeness. What about if they are close in same place, and between them is the opposite of that? Then it is said, between them is the completeness of distance. It means near and far from the spiritual side. Third, ibadatul mustahid, the worship of the shy people. They perform worship and obedience inspired by the shyness to God Almighty. As they knew that God is aware of their consciences, knew what is in their minds, and control every single minute of their affairs. They are ashamed of committing immorality. They proceed to obedience and worship, as in the hadith, "U'budillaha ka'annaka tarahu, fa'in lam takun tarahu, fa'innahu yaraka." Worship God as if you see Him. If you do not see Him, then He sees you. It is mentioned Luqman al-Hakim's will to his son. He said, "Oh son, if you want to disobey your God, refuse to a place where God does not see you." Fourth, ibadatul mutalazzizin, the worship of the epicure who enjoys the pleasure of worship. They are the ones who enjoy the worship of their God with greater pleasure compared to the people enjoy from the pleasure of this world. In Kitab Al-Kafi, it was narrated from Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam that God Almighty said, "Qala Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, ya ibadi as-siddiqin, tan'amu bi'ibadati fid dunya, fa innakum tatana'amuna biha fil akhirah." Oh, my faithful servants, enjoy worship in this world, for you will enjoy it in the hereafter. Fifth, ibadatul muhibbin, worship of lovers. They are the ones who, by their obedience and worship, reach the highest levels of perfection out of the level of God Almighty. The effects and influences of this love can be seen in the du'as. For example, the commander of the faithful, Sayyidina wa Maulana Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam said, "Fahabni ya ilahi sabartu ala azabik, fakaifa asbiru ala firaqik." Oh God, grant me patience with your torment, so how can I be patient with your separation? And the master of medicine, Imam Hussein alayhi salam said in the supplication of Arafah, وأنت الذي عزلت الأغيار عن قلوب أحبائك حتى لم يحبوا سواك ولم يلجأوا إلى غيرك. You are the one who removed others from the hearts of your loved ones, so that they love nothing but you and did not turn to others. 6. Ibadatul Arifin, worship of those who know, those who worship because God is qualified for worship. As Sayyidina wa Maulana Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam said, "Ilahi ma'abadtuka khawfan min narik." My God, I did not worship you for fear of your fire. Wala tama'an fi jannatik, or greed for your paradise. Walakin wajadtuka ahlan lil ibadati fa'abadtuka. But I found you worthy of worship, so I worship you. 7. Ibadatullahi linaili sawabuhu awil khalasi min iqabi. Worshipping God in order to gain His reward or deliverance from His punishment. There is disagreement about this type of worship. Some of our scholars didn't accept it. It was mentioned that Sayyid Ibn Tawus, Al-Fadil Al-Miqdad, Ibn Jamhur Al-Ahsa'i, and Shahid Awal, in their apparent meanings of lessons and method, because this intent is contrary to sincerity, which is the will of God Almighty. Worship like this is only seeks self-interest and prevent danger, not for the sake of God. Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq said, "Inna qawman abadullaha raqbatan fatilka ibadatut tujjar." People worship God Almighty out of fear, and it is the worship of slaves. Wa inna qawman abadullaha rahbatan fatilka ibadatul abid. And people worship God for the sake of reward, and that is the worship of the wage earner. Wa inna qawman abadullaha syukran fatilka ibadatul ahrar. And people worship God Almighty out of love for Him, And that is the worship of freedom's people. وَهِيَ أَفْضَلُ الْعِبَادَةِ. It is the best worship. But according to Sayyid Abdullah Shabbar, he said, وَكَيْفَ يُمْكِنُ لِعَبْدِ الضَّعِيفِ الذليل الذي لا يملك لنفسه نفعا ولا ضرا ولا موتا ولا حياة. But how can a weak slave survive who do not have harm, death, life, or resurrection for his soul? أن يستغني عن جلب النفع من مولاه لنفسه أو الضرار عنها. Get along without benefit from his master or prevent danger for himself. والعبادة المقصود بها الثواب أو الخلاص من العقاب إنما وقعت بأمره تعالى وطالبها طالب لرضاه وأمره. Worship that is intended to be rewarded or deliverance from punishment occurred by Allah's command, and a weak slave seek for the satisfaction of God and the command of God. Most people cannot accommodate that intent. So those ranks belong to imams, peace be upon them, and people who close to their dignity like Salman, Abu Dhar, and Miqdad. For example, when you come forward in front of your class and teach some subject to your students, so your teaching is dominated by love to show virtue and reputation. However, it crosses in your mind, you teach a lesson and regard it as worship, as closeness to God, then you seem to be equal in sincerity. Sayyid Abdullah Shabbar said that is voice from Al-Khannas, or whisperer from devil. Alladhi yuwaswisu fi sudurin nas, who whispers in the chest of people. This voice did not help you and did not save you from the merit of the hellfire. You should know the path to sincerity breaks the fortune of the soul and cuts off greed from the world and detachment from that what the sake of hereafter. How many people get tired after perform a worship only when they think they are pure for the sake of God Almighty, and they will be arrogant, self-admiring, and proud in it. They are unaware of the catastrophe they face. It was also narrated from some of people like that. He said, I performed praying for 30 years in the mosque in congregation in the first row because they cannot see me in the second row, so I prayed in the first row. How pleasure I am. This matter is very subtle and vague. Very few people are aware of it, and those who are obvious see their bad practice as good, and those who are obvious see their bad practice as good.